I've been working the night shift at St. Michael's Hospital for about 5 years. I thought I was used to the odd things that happened during those hours. But last November was different, and I can't shake what I experienced. To this day, I think about those nights. The first encounter happened on my third shift. Around midnight, I heard cries coming from the pediatric ward. They were distant, but clear enough to make my heart race. I walked toward the sound. The emergency lights flickered above me, casting long shadows. When I reached the ward, it was dead silent. I pushed the door open. The room was empty, and all the kids were sedated like they should be. A chill ran down my spine. Maybe I imagined it. I tried to brush it off. In the following weeks, things just got stranger. One night I was sitting at the nursing station when the lights in one of the patient rooms started to flicker. Nobody was in there. I looked at my watch, thinking I was just too tired. I closed my eyes for a moment, then I heard it. Soft laughter echoing down the hallway. I jumped up, my hands shaking. I wanted to believe it was just stress making me hear things. Then there were the toys. One night I found a stuffed animal sitting on my desk. I hadn't put it there. Maybe a kid left it? I didn't know. I put it in the supply closet and tried to focus on my patients. Hours later, the toy was back on my desk. My heartbeat quickened. I could almost taste the panic rising in my throat. Another night I started seeing shadows. They darted out of the corner of my eyes. Figures moved quickly around corners. Once, something cold brushed past my shoulder. I turned around, but there was nothing there. I told myself it was nothing. Hospitals are old, and the night can play tricks on anyone. But the last encounter was the worst. It was my final shift in November. I went to check on one of my patients. I stood by the door and froze. Outside the window, I swear I saw a figure. It was just standing there, staring at me. I blinked, and it was gone. I stumbled back into the room. I think I mumbled something, but I can't remember what. It felt wrong. As I wrapped up my last shift, I just couldn't shake that feeling. It felt like something was with me during those nights. I think about it all the time. Was it just the long hours messing with my mind? Or was there really something in that hospital? Walking out for the last time, I noticed the emptiness of those halls. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I left St. Michael's that night, but part of me still wonders about those shifts. The next week I found myself unable to shake the memories of St. Michael's. I thought leaving would help, but the unease lingered. I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, replaying the strange events in my mind. It all felt too real to forget. One night, while scrolling through my phone, I stumbled upon an online forum. People were sharing their experiences with haunted hospitals. I hesitated, but felt a pull to read more. That's when I came across a post about St. Michael's. I couldn't believe it. Someone else had seen the figure too. They described standing by the same window, seeing a shadow just outside, staring in. I shivered. Was my encounter one of many? Feeling anxious, I decided to reach out to the person who posted. I sent a message, less out of bravery and more out of desperation for answers. I waited, hoping for some explanation or reassurance that I wasn't losing my mind. Days passed, and my curiosity blended with dread. I kept replaying my last shift in my head, the odd laughter, the flickering lights. It felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. I wanted to go back, but the thought terrified me. Then, just as I was about to dismiss the idea, I received a reply. The user encouraged me to visit the hospital at night again. They mentioned a history of strange occurrences there. Something about a little girl who had gone missing years ago. They said she might still be there, playing, waiting for someone to notice. I was drawn in. What if the encounters I'd experienced were more than hallucinations? What if there was a connection to the little girl? I felt a mix of fear and intrigue stirring inside me. Could I face it again? Before I could overthink, I made a decision. I would return to St. Michael's. I needed to see for myself if the stories were true. If the hospital truly was haunted, then maybe I could find some closure. A knot twisted in my stomach as the date approached. That night, I stood outside the hospital. The full moon cast a heavy glow on the building. It felt ominous. In my heart, I hoped I wouldn't see anything, but part of me craved the answers. I pushed through the door and stepped inside. The familiar smell of antiseptic hit me. I walked the deserted halls, heart pounding. Every flicker of light sent shivers crawling up my arm. As I neared the pediatric ward, I heard it, the laughter. High-pitched and childlike, it echoed in the emptiness like a taunt. I felt frozen. Fear rooted me in place. Then everything went cold. The air thickened, and I sensed something looming behind me. I turned slowly, taking in the shadows around me. That's when I saw it. A little girl stood at the end of the corridor, staring right at me. Her eyes glimmered, almost pleading. I couldn't breathe. I was caught between running and staying. But I knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not yet. I couldn't look away from her. The little girl stood there, her hair cascading over a faded dress that hung loose on her small frame. I should have turned and dashed for the door, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The laughter returned, echoing around the hallway, taunting me to come closer. "Please," I heard the girl whisper, though her lips didn't move. That single word pierced through my fear, drawing me in. I took a shaky step forward, compelled by an urge I didn't understand. She seemed so fragile, so lost. I thought of the stories, the missing girl, trapped in this hospital for eternity. I needed to know her name. But uncertainty flooded me. What if I was just a target for something more sinister? Then, as if sensing my hesitation, she turned suddenly and darted further down the hall. My heart raced. What was I supposed to do? Follow her into the darkness? I took a deep breath and followed. The laughter now faded, replaced by silence. The corridor stretched endlessly before me, illuminated only by the flickering lights above. Each step I took felt heavy, laden with the weight of countless stories that hung in the air. The pediatric ward, I murmured to myself. I had to reach it. Maybe she was leading me there for a reason. I pushed onward, adrenaline pushing aside my fear, but doubt gnawed at my insides. What if I was walking into a trap? When I finally reached the pediatric ward doors, they swung open with a loud creak. The room was darker than I remembered. Toys lay scattered across the floor, abandoned as if the children had vanished in a hurry. I stepped inside, the cold air brushing against my skin. "Hello?" My voice sounded small in the vast space. I listened intently, waiting for a response. Silence. Just as I began to despair, I caught movement from the corner of my eye. A toy moved, bouncing slightly as if something had just brushed against it. My heart quickened. I turned sharply, and there she was again, standing in the far corner, her back to me. The shadows wrapped around her, creating an eerie silhouette. "Please don't go," I called out, half pleading, half afraid. "I just want to help." She turned her head slightly, and I caught a glimpse of her face. The look was bright and sad, all at once. It felt like an eternity. I took another step, and the warmth of the moment vanished. The lights above flickered violently, plunging me into near darkness. The once gentle laughter twisted into a painful scream that echoed through my bones. I stumbled backward, bumping into a chair, the noise of wood scraping against tile drowning out the chaos in my mind. "What's happening?" I shouted into the shadows, but only silence greeted me. That's when a cold wave swept through, chilling me to the bone. I felt another presence, one that didn't belong to her. Something darker. I turned again, scanning the room for any sign of life, and that's when I noticed the window. Moonlight poured in, illuminating a figure outside, the silhouette of a person, tall and menacing. The shape stood still, watching. I couldn't breathe as the dread washed over me. "Who are you?" I managed to croak, my voice trembling. But I already knew. Whatever it was, it didn't belong in this world. Then everything went black. I felt my footing slip as the shadows closed in around me. The girl was gone. I was alone, battling the unknown, and all I could do was scream. Maybe it wasn't over after all. I woke up on the floor, the cold tiles biting into my skin. Confusion clouded my mind. Was the figure still outside? I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline pumping through me. The pediatric ward was empty now, the shadows no longer shifting but eerily still. "Hello?" I called out again, my voice wavering. My heart thudded in my chest. The absence of the girl felt profound, as if her presence had meant something more. She had been an anchor in the storm of shadows. I scanned the room, looking for any sign of life. There was only silence, only a faint rustle from the corner where I had seen her last. Hesitantly, I took a step toward it. My foot caught on a toy, a small wooden block, and I tumbled forward, catching myself just before hitting the ground. That's when I noticed a small object glimmering under the dim light. I bent to pick it up, my fingers brushing against the cool surface. It was a locket, dusty and intricate. I opened it carefully, revealing 2 tiny photos inside. The first was of a little girl who looked strikingly like the one I'd seen. The second was of a woman, her face warm but sad. A shiver ran through me. "Is this yours?" I whispered, hoping somehow the girl would hear. But instead of an answer, I felt a warm breath against my ear. "Help me." I jerked back, heart racing. That voice wasn't mine. It came from the locket, echoing in the hollow silence of the room. I glanced around. Where was that girl? The darkness felt dense, closing in on me. I needed to leave. With the locket still clutched in my hand, I moved toward the door. It felt like the walls were closing in, the shadows crawling closer. Just as I reached the exit, the lights flickered again, and the laughter returned, sharp and taunting. I burst through the door into the hallway. It felt bright compared to the gloom of the ward. My breath escaped me in quick, shallow gasps. "Get it together," I muttered to myself. I wasn't safe yet. I had to find the exit. I raced down the corridor, my heart pounding against my ribs. It felt endless. I turned corners, the memories of stories I had heard here crashing through my mind. The ghostly presence of children. The tales of patients who never left. Then, from around the corner I spotted a flicker of movement. My heart stopped. Was it her? Or something worse? I pressed against the wall, breathing quietly, bracing myself for whatever I would find. The figure stepped into the light. It was a nurse, pale and weary. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, eyes wide with fear. Before I could respond, she glanced behind me, face draining of color. Without a word, she dashed down the opposite end of the hallway, her footsteps fading into the distance. "Wait!" I yelled, but it was no use. Confusion wrapped around me. What had she seen? And just like that, the laughter returned, harsh and mocking. I turned to run, locket clutched tightly in my hand, desperate to escape the sounds that chased me into the depths of the hospital. That's when I felt something cold wrap around my ankle. I stumbled, falling hard to the floor, and I knew then that it wasn't over. Something was coming for me, and I had to find the truth before it was too late. I hit the ground hard, my breath knocked out of me. Panic rose as I frantically twisted to see what had grabbed my ankle. It was nothing. Just the heaviness of the night, the weight of dread clinging to me like a wet blanket. With shaking hands, I pushed myself up, locket still gripped tightly. I glanced back down the hall. The shadows seemed to dance in the flickering lights, and the laughter was muted, but still lingering. I couldn't stay here. I sprang to my feet and sprinted toward the nearest exit sign, my heart racing. Just as I rounded the corner, I caught a glimpse of something at the far end of the corridor. It was a swinging door labeled staff only. Normally, that would be off limits, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I dashed inside, praying it would lead me out. The hall was cramped and quiet, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic. I hurried past rows of old storage closets, the shelves filled with medical supplies collecting dust. My thoughts were a jumbled mess. I thought of the girl, the locket, and the nurse's terrified expression. What had she seen that made her flee? From somewhere deeper in the storage area, I heard a shuffling sound like someone, or something, was moving around. I stopped, every instinct telling me to hide. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to listen. Then I heard a soft voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Help me." I felt a chill run down my spine. Was it her? I tried to move closer, but the floor creaked beneath me. I stilled, heart pounding. The voice called out again, more urgent. "Please help me." It wasn't the girl's voice, but it felt just as lost. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. The echoes twisted in the narrow hall. I needed to see. Summoning all my courage, I inched toward the sound. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist in warning, but I pressed on. The voice grew louder, clearer. I found myself in front of a door, slightly ajar, and pushed it open. Inside was a bleak little room filled with empty beds. It looked like a storeroom for old medical equipment. In the corner there was a figure slouched over. Long hair hung like cobwebs around her face, obscuring her features. "Are you all right?" I managed to say, fear lacing my words. The figure turned slowly, revealing a pale face, eyes wide and unblinking. "I'm trapped," she whispered. "Please help me find the way out." The tension in the air thickened. Were there more like her? Or something worse? I felt pulled into the depths of the room, but a surge of instinct told me to tread carefully. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered and died completely, leaving me in silence and darkness. I fumbled for the door, but disoriented, I felt a coldness wrapping around me again, gripping my wrists, my ankles. Panic flooded my mind, and I had to fight. "Let go!" I screamed, tearing at the unseen hands. I knew I couldn't let whatever this was drag me down. I felt like I was being pulled into a shadow, and I had to escape. With every ounce of strength, I tore free and stumbled backward into the room. But the girl was gone. The bed was empty now. I stood alone in the dark, heart racing. I had to find the exit. I had to get out before I became trapped too. But first, I needed to uncover what was hiding in the dark. That's when I heard it, a soft rhythmic tapping behind me like fingers against the wall. I turned slowly, dread filling my chest. Another presence, lurking just out of sight. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. The rhythmic tapping continued, echoing off the sterile walls. It sounded so close yet remained frustratingly out of reach. I squinted into the darkness, eyes darting around, desperate for any identifying features. "Hello?" My voice trembled as it broke the eerie silence. No response, just the tapping. It was almost melodic, sending a chill down my spine. I couldn't ignore it. Somehow I had to confront whatever was toying with me. Carefully, I stepped toward the sound, each footfall muffled against the cold tile floor. The walls seemed to close in on me, shadows pressing heavier against my back. With each step, I tried to convince myself that I was just being paranoid, that it was all in my head. Then I saw it, a faint line of light filtering from a door at the end of the hallway. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, and I realized it was coming from behind that door. My heart raced as I approached, its handle cold beneath my fingers. What if there was something truly sinister waiting on the other side? As I opened the door, the noise abruptly ceased. Inside, the light flickered awkwardly, illuminating dusty equipment and abandoned files strewn across the floor. The realization hit me. Someone had been here before. I stepped inside, scanning the room, feeling the air thick with something almost electric. There was a hospital bed in the corner, sheets rustling slightly as if someone had just vacated it. It was impossible. I had been certain I was alone. The shadows shifted as I moved, making the familiar feel foreign. My mind raced with questions. Who had been here? Where had they gone? Suddenly the lights buzzed back to life, illuminating a mirror across the room. My own reflection stared back at me, but there was something off about it. I blinked hard, trying to convince myself it was just the dim lighting playing tricks. But then, it smiled. A slow, twisted grin that was not my own. I stumbled back, shock pulling at me. I was losing it. After everything I'd experienced tonight, I was staring into a mirror, jumpy and paranoid. I gave myself a shake, turning to escape that room. But as I hit the door, it slammed shut behind me. I yanked at the handle frantically, but it wouldn't budge. "Let me out!" I shouted, panic clawing at my throat. I thumped against the door, heart pounding. "That won't help." The voice came from somewhere behind me. I froze, every muscle tensing. It was low and mocking, slithering into my ears like ice. I turned slowly, breath catching in my throat. There, just out of the light, stood a figure, cloaked in shadows. My mind raced. It looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "Someone who knows what it means to be trapped," it said. The dread washed over me as I realized this wasn't just a ghost or a figment. This was something real. The grip of fear tightened around me. I needed to escape, to run, but I was out of options. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the figure stepped closer, raising a pale hand. "You have to help them. They're still here." I had no idea what this meant, but I knew one thing. Whatever was haunting this place was only beginning to reveal itself. I took another steadying breath, my mind racing. I couldn't allow fear to take control now. Behind the figure's somber demeanor was a sense of urgency that cut through my panic. "Help who?" I asked, trying to buy myself time to think. The shadow shifted, and for a fleeting second, I thought I could see a face. A woman, tired and lost. But then it was gone, swallowed by darkness. "They're calling out for help," it said, its voice echoing as if coming from the very walls around me. "You're the only one who can hear them." My heart pounded in my chest. This had to be some kind of sick joke, right? It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. "I don't understand." "What do you want from me?" "Listen," it urged, pointing to the hospital bed in the corner. Suddenly I noticed that under the sheets was a lump, and a soft whimper echoed in the room. I hesitated, fear creeping back in, but the figure flickered closer, its persistence overwhelming. "You have to see it." Tentatively I stepped closer to the bed, each shuffling step filled with dread. I reached for the sheets, not knowing what awaited me. As I pulled them back, the sight froze my blood. A small child lay there, eyes closed, pale as the sheets draping over them. My breath caught in my throat and I nearly stumbled back. "Help them," the figure whispered insistently, pressing forward. I stared at the child, heart racing. But how? What can I do? The feeling of helplessness washed over me, threatening to drown me like the fear coursing through my veins. The figure reached out, fingers brushing my wrist. "You have to wake them up. They're trapped in between." The room seemed to pulse with energy, a cold draft swirling around me. I glanced back at the door. It still wouldn't budge, solid and unyielding. My mind raced, but deep down, I felt an instinct stirring. I had to act. I remembered the stories I'd heard from the older nurses about the hospital's dark past, the unsolved cases, the lives lost too soon. Had this child been one of them? Was this why I felt drawn here? Taking a deep breath, I leaned closer to the child. "Hey, you," I whispered, panic giving way to a desperate hope. "It's okay. Wake up." But nothing happened. I shook the child gently, fear and hopelessness clawing at me. "Please, wake up. Someone needs you." Then, suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, illuminating the room fully. The shadows receded, and the figure melted away, leaving the child exposed beneath the harsh fluorescent glow. In that moment, I could see a faint glow around the child's body, almost like a haze. It felt alive. Panic surged within me. "I won't leave you," I murmured, desperation lacing my words. And just as I sensed a shift, the child's eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes that seemed to look straight through me. Yet there was a recognition there, a connection. Then everything went dark. The lights extinguished, leaving me in total blackness, the child's eyes still piercing through the void. "Help!" I shouted into the dark, swallowing the panic rising in my throat. But this time, I felt a different presence around me, an energy that buzzed, filled me with dread. And yet this overwhelming urge to uncover the truth rushed through me. What was happening now? Where was the child? And more importantly, what had I awakened? I blinked in the dark, willing myself to see something, Anything. My heart raced as I strained to hear any sign of movement. The child. Where had they gone? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I needed to regain my composure. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cold metallic bed rail. It was a small comfort, grounding me in the reality of the hospital. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence answered back, thick and oppressive. Suddenly, a faint light shimmered in the distance, flickering like a dying flame. I felt drawn to it, an instinct pushing me forward. With shaky steps, I moved toward the source, where the shadows clung tightly to the corners of the room, muting everything around me. As I approached the light, I realized it was coming from the doorway, an ajar door leading to the hallway. I pushed it open wider, my breath hitching in my throat as the fluorescent glow illuminated the corridor beyond. But the hallway was not empty. Figures shuffled through the haze of light, their forms barely visible, nurses and patients, but also something else. Darker shapes lingered just out of sight, whispering hushed words that echoed like distant thunder. My instinct told me to turn back, to run, but I had to know what was happening. "Why are you here?" I whispered, unsure if anyone could hear me. One figure turned, and for a split second, I locked eyes with someone familiar, a colleague from my first month on the job. But then, in a blink, her expression changed from concern to horror, as if she could see something I couldn't. Then I felt it. A chilling draft swept through the corridor and the lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows that danced against the walls. "No," I murmured, backing away. "Not again." But my body wouldn't respond. I was frozen in place, drawn into the mystery that swirled around me. That was when I noticed a figure appearing from behind the nurses. Small, almost translucent. It was the child from the bed, gazing up at me with wide, pleading eyes. "Help!" The voice was soft, but echoed in my mind, clearer than before. "You have to find me." "Find you?" I echoed, desperation flooding my veins. "Where are you?" The child reached out, their hand glowing slightly like the remnants of that strange haze I had seen before. "Follow me." Then they turned and dashed down the hallway. With an urgency I couldn't question, I ran after them, dodging past the figures that seemed to swirl and fade, the air crackling with energy. As I chased the child, I realized the shadows were closing in around us. They seemed to stretch and contort, reaching for the little figure leading the way, as if they wanted to draw us back to darkness. "Wait!" I shouted, terror pushing my legs faster. But then the child rounded a corner, vanishing from view. I skidded to a stop, panting, the din of whispers growing louder around me. My pulse raced as I caught my breath, and I strained to listen. What were they saying? And that was when I saw it. A door I had never noticed before, tucked away behind a flickering light. If the child had gone through, there was no time to hesitate. "I'm coming!" I yelled, pushing through the threshold as the whispers morphed into a cacophony of terrified protests. The door slammed shut behind me, and darkness enveloped me once more. My heart sank. Whatever lay ahead was shrouded in fear, and I had stepped right into it. The darkness closed in around me like a heavy blanket. I strained my eyes, trying to make sense of my new surroundings, but everything was shadows and outlines. I felt a cold sweat on my brow as I fought to regain my bearings. "Hello?" I called again, my voice trembling in the void. There was no echo, just silence pressing down on me. I instinctively took a step forward, my foot finding nothing solid under it. I stumbled, arms flailing, barely catching myself against what felt like a wall. "I need to find the child," I reminded myself, heartbeat pounding in my ears. I concentrated, trying to remember the faint glow, the urgency in that small voice. "This isn't over." I shuffled forward, feeling my way along the wall. The air was thick and stale, and I felt the weight of something behind me, watching. With each cautious step, I felt the shadows shift. It was as if they were alive, curling and twisting, ready to snatch me away. Then, I heard it. A soft giggle, like a distant memory surfacing in the dark. "It's not safe here," the laughter whispered, echoing off non-existent walls. Was it the child? No, it sounded too playful, too mocking. My skin crawled. "Who's there?" I called out, a crack in my voice. Silence fell again, thick and stifling. I pressed on, the laughter fading until it was a distant murmur. My fingers brushed over the wall, and I felt something smooth, a doorknob. Without thinking, I twisted it, the sensation of hope flickering in my chest. The door swung open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downwards. As I descended, the temperature dropped. My breath came out in puffs of mist. This couldn't be right. The hospital didn't have a basement. Desperation gripped me, but I couldn't turn back now. The light from the child's hand flickered once more in my mind, urging me onward. At the bottom of the staircase, I found a small room bathed in an eerie glow. My heart sank. It felt like a shrine, a collection of old hospital toys, tattered children's books, and hastily scribbled notes scattered around the floor. "Find the toy," one note read, "and you'll find me." I knelt, rifling through the mess, fingers trembling. "What toy?" I murmured, my voice barely breaking the heavy silence. Then I heard it again, the giggle, echoing from behind me. I whipped around. A figure stood in the shadows, small and indistinct. "You're looking in the wrong place," it said, voice echoing like a taunt. "Where's the child?" I demanded, fear sharpening my tone. The figure stepped forward, just enough for me to see a glimmer in their eyes, a hint of familiarity. "I can help you," the figure said, an ounce of sincerity replacing the playfulness. "But you need to let go of the past." I recoiled. "What do you know about it?" Then the air shifted, heavy and charged. Everything felt wrong. I glanced back at the doorway, sensing that the shadows were closing in again, more aggressive this time. "Choose wisely," the figure warned, and I sensed an urgency that made me shiver. I felt trapped, and just then I heard another sound, soft, sweet, and familiar. The child's voice echoed through the shadows, pulling at my heart. "Help me find you, please." And just like that, everything went dark once more. When the darkness enveloped me for what felt like the 100th time, I fought the urge to panic. I could still hear the child's voice, echoing in my mind, an urgent plea woven through the shadows. "Help me find you." It felt like my connection to whatever mystery was unraveling before me. Somehow I needed to break through the dark veil that surrounded me. I tried to steady my breath, forcing myself to concentrate, to imagine that light, that warmth. "Focus," I whispered to myself. "You can do this." I felt my heart race as I took a small step forward, feeling for any surface that could guide me. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic, a wall. I pressed on, sliding my hand over its surface until I felt the knob again. I twisted it and found the door swinging open, revealing another room spun in shadows. As I stepped inside, the air shifted, the familiar smell of antiseptic replaced by musty decay. The dim light from outside barely penetrated here, leaving me feeling suspended between realms. Disorientation clawed at me, yet I felt compelled to push forward. I squinted into the darkness. It seemed to beckon me, a voice whispering through each shadow. "Help! Find me!" This time, it felt undeniably urgent, as though it was wrapping around me, pulling me deeper. The childish tone twisted into something that sent shivers down my spine. "Where?" I called into the void. "Where are you?" Suddenly, the faint glow returned, flickering at the far end of the room. I stumbled toward it, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I neared, the aura illuminated old toys strewn across the floor. There were sickly sweet teddy bears, worn-out dolls with painted smiles, and toy cars that seemed to scream of happier times. Among them, I spotted a small music box, its silver surface tarnished with age. My heart raced at the thought that maybe, just maybe, this was the toy I needed to find. I dropped to my knees, frantically digging through the pile. My hands grazed the music box, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a rush of warmth. Then, a voice hissed close to my ear. "You better hurry." It gripped my heart with cold dread. Terrified, I turned to meet the shadow again, the figure I thought I had lost in the chaos. But it remained just out of reach, its form indistinct and shifting like smoke. "Who are you?" I shouted, desperation lacing my words. "Someone trapped between worlds," it replied, voice soaked in sorrow. "Turn back while you can." "No, I can't," my resolve surged, fueled by the echoes of the child's cries. "I have to help them. I can feel them here." As if recognizing the thirst for connection in my heart, the figure swayed forward, gaining clarity for a brief moment. It looked like the child from before, but older. "You can break this cycle. You must remember." "What do you mean?" I pleaded, gripping the music box tightly. "Find the locket and you'll find her heart," the figure murmured. Before I could respond, it seemed to melt into the shadows again. A cold chill rushed through me, but I didn't have time to dwell on my own fright. With newfound resolve, I focused on the familiar runic patterns on the music box. I flicked it open with trembling fingers, conjuring an almost childlike hope within me. As it played a sweet, haunting melody, the shadows around me began to dance gently, swirling like smoke. The endless night felt sudden and transformative, pulling me further in. The dim world I found myself in seemed to pulse with life. And then, I saw her. The child who had been lost, cradled in that faint glow, as if she were the one orchestrating the music. "Help me," she whispered, her eyes wide and pleading. Wide. Suddenly, understanding washed over me like a cleansing wave. I reached out, letting the music flow through me. "I'm here," I said firmly. "I won't let go." The light around her brightened, growing almost blinding, and I felt the weight of the shadows shift, trembling with uncertainty. Then I remembered the locket, still gripped in my other hand. I ripped it open, ready to summon whatever light was inside. As I did so, the memories flooded back. Visions of laughter, of joy within those sterile rooms, and a promise stretched across time. "Together," I shouted over the whispers of the dark, and just as the warmth ignited within me, the shadows recoiled, shadows screeching as they pulled away from that little glow. The child smiled, light blazing around her as she stepped forward, her own small hand reaching for mine. "You found me." A powerful surge cascaded through the room, a force that felt ancient and filled with both grief and hope. The other figures began to coalesce, light spilling into the once enshrouded darkness, howling and creaking as they bolted toward the edges. "Do not be afraid, my dear." A familiar voice, soft but charged with love, broke through the cacophony, its warmth wrapping around me like a quilt. "You need to let go." Letting go. Without thinking, I released the locket, watching as it spiraled into the darkness. In that act of surrender, the laughter twisted into a melody, a bittersweet farewell that felt oddly comforting. And then it all exploded, cascades of memories flooding my mind as the ward filled with light, the shadows dissipating into nothingness. I shut my eyes tight, trying to shield myself from the blinding white light. When I finally opened them, I found myself not in that cold room but standing outside, bathed in the gentle glow of dawn, the warmth of sunlight washing over me. The hospital was silent, regal, looking as though it had never been touched by the darkness that had consumed its walls. But there was a residual quiet lingering in the air, a reminder of something I couldn't quite shake. I turned to see shadows falling behind me, faint outlines of figures watching from a distance. Were they grateful, condemned to wander forever? Whatever the answer, I felt the weight of their story pressed against my heart. It was over, but I wouldn't be the same. The question of what truly happened there and the fates of those lost would linger within me, a knot of curiosity intertwined with memories I dared not disturb. As I stepped away from the hospital, I couldn't help but think that though the night had passed, some mysteries remain eternally unresolved, hiding in the corners of light and dark.